Hiya, folks. It's Pastor John here, and trying something new. My daughter Delilah, who's 13, so very plugged in. She tells me, "Dad, I know you write your blogs, but nobody reads blogs anymore. You should do video or Instagram, I guess." But anyway, I'm gonna try doing my blogs as video logs and see what happens. So this week, I went out and saw a movie. I went Sunday night because, the Eagles weren't doing so well. So I went and saw Joker. And Joker is a tough film to watch. For those of you who might have been considering going and seeing this film, let me warn you that it is not a comic book movie in the traditional sense of comic book movies. It's not Avengers. It's not. In fact, Deadpool broke the mold with comic book movies, and it is much more intense than Deadpool. In fact, really, it's not really a comic book movie. It's more of a character story. It's an alternate version of the origin of Batman's nemesis, the Joker, but it really is about one man's journey, one man's experience in dealing with mental illness. Is really what it is. It's a tough film to watch. Very disturbing. I think it got a little overhyped at the beginning with all of the talk about, it's going to create violence. There's nothing like that. In fact, the few scenes in the film that are violent are, trust me, you see a whole lot worse in most movies today. It really wasn't that bad. I think this film does owe a lot to director Martin Scorsese. Now, he didn't direct this film. Todd Phillips directed this film, but there are elements of this film that feel like they're lifted directly out of Taxi Driver and King of Comedy, which are Scorsese films, and it really is. It's a dark, disturbing film. I do want to lift up the fact that Joaquin Phoenix, who plays the Joker in this film, is phenomenal. His acting, if he doesn't at very least get a nomination, I think he ought to win an Oscar for it. But I don't vote, so I don't know. But man, oh man, it's hard to take a character like the Joker, who is completely unsympathetic, if you've ever read Batman comic books, and make him a sympathetic character. Really, Phoenix did that in this film. It's worth seeing for that, if for nothing else. If you're a Batman fan, there's a lot of nods to Batman in this film. But what I really come to talk about is the theology in it. What are the theological things that show up in the movie? Where do we lift those up? And the challenge here is that becomes very difficult when it really is a sort of a one-person film. It's hard to lift up those theological themes in there. There are some obvious nods to it. There's one scene where Joker's injured, and they lay him out on a car hood, and he's kind of laying with his arms out, and it's reminiscent of Christ on the cross. But I'm not sure he's the kind of savior you'd want to follow. That's probably not great imagery, I think, for Christians. It invokes that idea, but Joker's not somebody I'd want to follow. But I do think that there's an opportunity here, if you're going to go and see this film, that it ought to open up some discussions. It ought to it ought to challenge us to think about how we deal with mental illness in this day and age, because that is one of the primary factors in the progression of this character, is how he's dealt with by social workers and state hospitals and things like that, and not just him, but other characters in the film as well. I don't want to spoil anything, and in case you haven't seen it, um, I think that's maybe a challenge for us. Is how do we think about that as Christians? How do we think about um, mental illness in this country? And as the church, how are we part of solutions and not perpetuating the problems? Yeah, that's where I'll leave you with it this week. If you go out and see it, it's worth seeing. I wouldn't take my kids. I didn't take my 13-year-old. She's not happy with me because I didn't. But go and see it for yourself first, and decide whether this is the kind of film you want your kids to see. Like I said, not your typical comic book movie, so go in knowing that. Anyway, take care. Be blessed. I'll talk to you later. Bye now.